I was reading on my chapters, and in chapter three, I came across a part where Rook is basically kind of envious of Varen because Varen is meditating. He's in a meditative state, and they're in a rock quarry and imprisonment camp, basically. And she's just kind of like envious of his calmness because in her, when she sits silent, when she sits still, it's dangerous. Living the life of a rogue, sitting still is dangerous. And I was kind of reflecting on that in my childhood, in my past in general. I guess not so much my childhood, that's where it stems from, but what I was reflecting on was currently, and I've gotten better at it, but the sitting still, the quietness, it's almost like in doing so, you just feel like anything could happen. And instead of thinking of the possibilities of anything could happen as a good thing, you think of anything wrong that could happen. You sit there and you just kind of ponder and you let your mind, kind of get away from you. But the thing of it is what you have to realize is if you want change, if you want to move forward from something, if you want to have opportunities to change, whether it's finances, whether it's behaviors, which even with finances, it leads down to behaviors. But your behaviors and your stories, if you want to change that, you have to sit in the stillness. You have to create a place for opportunity. If you have a closet full of clothes and you want a new outfit because you're tired of the same old thing, you can't keep opening up a closet crammed full of clothes and being upset that you don't have a place. Because if you create an empty space, then that means that you don't have clothes at all. You don't have enough. So what you have to do is be okay with that space. Create a space for opportunity. Create a space to be filled. If you want something, you have to make space for it, make a place for it. So in the same way, you want to try to be comfortable in the silence and the stillness. And maybe you identify wanting more with working hard, with hustling, with not necessarily hustling, but the hustle of it. The have to get things done. I've got so much on my plate. I'll get this and that and this and that and this and that. And I have to work hard and harder and harder and harder. And when you sit down, you're so exhausted from pushing yourself so hard and never resting that you have zero energy. So you have to start toning back and work with the less is more, but it's really about quality over quantity. You want to sit down and evaluate what you're doing and where you can be more proficient, where you can be better at it, or less movement but more effectiveness. And then that will create more energy and more space. And then you have to get comfortable in the space itself, and like I said, how it comes from your childhood is if you had a childhood where you weren't seen necessarily, you weren't understood. Uh, it doesn't necessarily have to be an abusive childhood because I did have an abusive childhood, but it really was not that abusive. Like it wasn't that I was consistently scared, but in that I was afraid to be seen. I was afraid because if you're seen, then you are not a target per se, but you're available for someone to be upset and then see you do something that upsets them, and then they focus on that. Mine was mostly verbal from my mom. I love my mom, and it wasn't really anything she did wrong. She did the best that she could. Our parents do the best that they can with what they have. Argue with me if you want, but sometimes also the best parent is one that isn't there because it forces you to step up. Granted, it kind of robs you of some of your childhood, but really you're going to find yourself at a point in time, which is where I'm at right now, is where you work with your inner child, you work with the behaviors that you want to change, and you look back to see where they came from. You don't have to, but it helps shine light on how to move forward, how to heal and grow from those things. They're not weaknesses or broken points. They're opportunities to expand, opportunities to grow from that and really reparent yourself. Be the parent that you deserved. And again, this is a little bit tender of an area because, like I said, my mom, she was heavily abused as a child. So the amount of abuse that I received verbally and sometimes physically was out of love in trying to navigate those waters and do better while still giving in to anger issues and tempers and emotions and not having a proper structure to work from herself. So she's did the best that she could. And that did make it a little harder on me to heal as well, because when I look back and I'm like, this was bad, this wasn't okay, but it wasn't as bad as others had. So I had to look back and really be real with myself and understand that me going back into some of these things is not something that my mom did wrong, and not a hatefulness for my mom or an upsetness at her, but that was not okay. She did her best. But now, in order to move forward, I need to analyze it and see where I can fill in those gaps and holes, where I can do better with the me now. And you don't necessarily have to dig back, like I said, because a lot of us had traumatic childhoods, and a lot of us had things that we regret or don't. And in the same way, too, though, actually, I don't mean to jump a little bit, but I was watching Ironheart with my daughter, and her stepdad and her best friend had got killed. And in there was a point where the hologram, that's kind of like Jarvis, sends out this image of what happened. And she's like, why would you do that? And the AI said, because when you bury the past, the things that hurt you that you don't want to see, you also bury the good with it, and you miss those things. So in the same way that when you're dredging up this past, you're, I think it's what they say, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're throwing out the good with the bad. And again, none of this is judgment, and everything is a tool. Like, this works right now. It doesn't mean it's going to work later. It might be the improper tool using it the right way, or the right tool using it improperly. The fact of the matter is, you're putting the effort in, you're trying to figure out and pull back your attachment of the outcome, pull out your attachment of the process. Drop in your heart and feel what feels right for the moment, and don't judge yourself. The same compassion that you give others, you have to give back to yourself. The same love that you give others, you have to give back to yourself. Giving love to yourself, giving power, giving finances, giving compassion to yourself is not going to create some sort of monster. The very person inside of you that thinks that might is the very person that is the reason it won't create a monster. You're not going to use it for bad. And even if you do get caught up in it and you start to harm, you will immediately catch that. And then from there, you'll move forward and you'll find out that's just another way not to do it. So essentially, in this, though, in the book, it really opened up my eyes to see, where am I afraid of something? Where am I not able to do something, and to work on that? Because I've been working on creating space. I've been working on honoring my energy and not just giving it to everybody and everything, and balancing the ability to work hard and to work smart, and know when I need to pull back and when I need to say no, or when I need to let go of my ego and let somebody else take over. So in doing so, I've gotten better about managing my energy and time a little bit, working on time, my relationship with time in general, but also in doing so, I'm really just working on creating a space, because I want things, and I've released the attachment of how to get those things, but the space of it, creating the space and the opportunity for it to come to me. Like, I want a greater connection with my higher self, with spirit. But when I'm not creating a time and place to sit down and give, when I listen to a morning meditation, and it's always a guided meditation, which is great, but I'm not really giving this space for spirit to come in and speak with me, whether it be verbal, image, auditory, visual, no matter what it be. I'm not creating that space. energetically. And the same throughout the day. I've cut back listening to music. I've started listening to music again more because music can be a spell. It can be programming. It can be something that my subconscious takes. And I'm trying to bring that back in because I love music. I feel it when I listen to it. But I was trying to create space by listening to podcasts and mediums on YouTube. And that's great. But when I listen to it, sometimes it falls in the background. And also I'm consistently flooding my sensory system with information, which also means that I'm not creating a space for spirit. In the fear that if I create a space for spirit, I'll fall back into my habits of the day-to-day norm to norm and not being aware of the situation around me and the things around me and the feelings around me. So again, at the end of this message, what it's really about is trying to know that if you want something different, if you want change, you have to create a space for it. You have to reserve the energy for it. And you also have to be willing to be open to the change, to change the things that are impeding the change, and really just have an overall unapologetic, but also self-compassionate view of everything, non-judgmental, like the observer, but also still participating. Like you don't want to just be the observer and see things and be like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's a great perspective. And it's very helpful. It's a tool. But if it's the only tool, then you're almost being like Spock in Star Trek. You're basically releasing your emotion. And, that was great for him. And then Data, but what did they both want back in the day in Star Trek? They wanted, well, they didn't want, but eventually Data wanted emotion to be more human. And then Spock eventually started folding emotion into his intellect, I guess. So it's really it's a hand. It's a mind, body, spirit, and heart that you want to integrate all of these things and move fluidly as one. So that is my message that I took today from rereading my chapter. And I'm going to keep doing this because in my book that I'm writing, it is a fantasy, but there's also points of like I'm putting myself into it. Not everything is about me. This isn't a reflection of my life. It's the character I'm creating, but I take inspiration from the things around me. And in doing so, sometimes these nuggets of wisdom that I've digested from other sources, processed, and I'm putting into the book unintentionally because it just fits and flows. That's the story taking life of itself. So when I run across these little nuggets once a week, I'm going to go ahead and pop in here and just kind of talk about my reflection on it and share with you. And feel free to share amongst yourself in the comments, please. That would be amazing. And I'll interact as best that I can with the time that I have afforded to me to do so, because I do get caught in doom scrolling. I do get caught on social media, and I'm managing that because I love it. But also there comes a point in time where you're like, where did the time go? Or I can't dedicate my time to a movie or a TV show that's too long, but then you spend that much time doom scrolling. So I'm working on that because in order to honor myself, some of it's informative, some of it's entertaining, but within reason. So I'll get in the comments as best that I can. And just also, if you want to like and subscribe, anything that you do interacting with this video helps put it out there for others in our soul tribe, so to speak. So have a great day. Thank you very much for watching. I love you guys, and I will talk to you later.